Let's get to Ford. American-bred Ford now on the hunt for real estate, possibly outside the U.S. Ford announcing it is going to move the manufacturing of its Focus and its C-Max from Wayne, Michigan to a new location.
For more than 100 years, Ford has been the backbone of American industry. But now the company is making a shocking move that could send shockwaves through the economy. While some call it a betrayal, others say it's the only way Ford can survive. So what's really happening? This isn't just another corporate decision. It's a direct challenge to everything Trump stands for. What Ford just announced changes the game for American manufacturing, electric vehicles, and even the future of U.S. jobs. And the fallout, it's only just beginning. So how will this impact American workers and the future of electric vehicles? And could this spark a bigger battle? Stick around. This is a story you won't want to miss. The bombshell nobody saw coming. At first, it seemed like a standard corporate update, another press release among many. But as the details emerged, the significance became undeniable. The message was clear. They were no longer playing by Donald Trump's rules. Ford had just confirmed that a significant portion of its electric vehicle production would be moved overseas. For a company so deeply intertwined with the American automotive landscape, this was nothing short of a declaration. The response was immediate. News outlets broke the story within minutes, each one dissecting the implications. Social media exploded with reactions from both sides, some hailing Ford's boldness, others calling it an act of betrayal. Workers, industry leaders, and political figures all weighed in, trying to make sense of what this meant for the future of American manufacturing. But this decision wasn't made lightly. Ford had been navigating a tightening economic landscape for months, forced to choose between survival and loyalty to its American roots. And when the moment came, the company made a move that no one had anticipated. Yet this was just the beginning. Ford wasn't simply trying to protect its bottom line. It had just fired a shot in a battle that would shake the entire industry. And what triggered this decision in the first place? That's where the story takes an even more shocking turn. The hidden battle behind the scenes. The heart of the conflict lay in the cost of production. Donald Trump's strict protectionist policies, designed to keep jobs in the United States, had unintended consequences for manufacturers. Tariffs on key materials like steel, aluminum, and the lithium required for electric vehicle batteries drove production costs through the roof. What was once an effort to prioritize American industry had, for companies like Ford, become an unsustainable burden. Behind the scenes, Ford executives had been weighing their options. They knew that continuing to manufacture electric vehicles domestically under the current policies would make them less competitive on the global stage. Meanwhile, international competitors, free from these restrictions, were moving ahead, producing vehicles at a fraction of the cost. If Ford wanted to keep up, they had to make a move. The final push came from the instability of the supply chain. With constant disruptions in raw material imports, production delays had become the norm. The automotive industry operates on razor-thin margins, and every additional cost, every delay, could mean the difference between leading the market and falling behind. Ford had seen the warning signs. They had tried to adapt, investing in domestic facilities and attempting to negotiate with policymakers. But as the situation worsened, the company had to make a decision: stick with a system that was becoming increasingly unsustainable, or take the necessary steps to remain a dominant force in the industry. It wasn't just about Ford's survival, it was about the future of electric vehicles in the United States. The company saw an opportunity to shift its focus toward international expansion, leveraging global partnerships to secure its place in the evolving market. And then, Ford made the call. The plan was set in motion, but the moment it became public, it was only a matter of time before Donald Trump responded. And when he did not hold back. Trump's explosive reaction. Donald Trump wasted no time declaring war on Ford. The announcement blindsided him, and his response was swift, forceful, and, as expected, explosive. At a rally shortly after the news broke, he took the stage with fire in his eyes. The crowd erupted in cheers before he even spoke, sensing the fight that was about to unfold. And when he finally did, he made his position clear. Ford has turned its back on the American worker, he roared. They are shipping your jobs overseas while you are left to pick up the pieces. We built Ford. The American worker built Ford. And this is how they repay us? The crowd responded with chants of outrage. The anger was real, and Donald Trump knew exactly how to fuel it. He promised action, vowing that any company that abandoned American jobs would face consequences. Tariffs, penalties, the revocation of government contracts, everything was on the table. But Ford had anticipated this reaction. They knew that making such a move would put them directly in Donald Trump's line of fire, and yet they went through with it anyway. Because this wasn't just about politics. The backlash was immediate, but it wasn't just coming from Donald Trump's base. News stations across the spectrum took their own positions. Some argued that Ford's move was a necessary step in adapting to a changing global economy. Others painted it as a betrayal of the very workers who had kept the company alive for more than a century. The debate quickly spread beyond the automotive world. Political analysts weighed in, economists issued their predictions, and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle were forced to take a stance. And yet, through all of this, Ford remained steady. Because this wasn't just about making a statement. It was a calculated decision, and they were about to make that clear to the entire world. Ford's calculated counterattack. Instead of apologizing, Ford doubled down. In a carefully worded press release, the company addressed the growing controversy head-on. They didn't backpedal. They didn't try to soften the impact of their decision. Instead, they framed it as a necessary step for survival, innovation, and progress. Ford has always been committed to leading the future of mobility, the statement read. As the industry evolves, we must make strategic decisions to ensure our ability to compete on a global scale. Our dedication to American jobs remains steadfast, but our priority is also to remain at the forefront of innovation. Ford wasn't just shifting production overseas to cut costs. They were positioning themselves to dominate the electric vehicle market. With global expansion came greater access to materials, lower production costs, and the ability to invest in cutting-edge battery technology. The statement also emphasized Ford's continued investment in the United States, highlighting its plans to expand research and development centers and increase domestic production of high-tech vehicle components. It was a carefully crafted response, one that acknowledged the concerns while standing firm on the decision. Yet the battle wasn't over. If anything, it had only begun, because this wasn't just a corporate maneuver. It was a direct challenge to Donald Trump's economic agenda, and the war between the White House and one of America's most iconic automakers was only going to escalate. And what happened next? No one saw coming. The war escalates. What's really at stake? Is Ford selling out the American worker? Or is this the only way they can survive? That is the question dividing an entire nation. When the company announced its decision to shift a significant portion of its electric vehicle production overseas, it was more than just a corporate move. It was a direct challenge to everything the American automotive industry had been built upon. But Ford is facing a reality that cannot be ignored. The cost of manufacturing electric vehicles in the United States is skyrocketing, in part due to tariffs on essential materials like lithium, cobalt, and nickel. These resources are the backbone of the electric vehicle revolution, yet they are primarily controlled by markets overseas. With supply chain disruptions and unpredictable trade policies, Ford has found itself in a position where staying competitive means making tough decisions. This is not just about Ford. It is a sign of a much larger shift in the global economy. Automakers are no longer just competing with each other. They are competing with entire nations and international trade networks. Ford's leadership believes that in order to stay ahead, they must embrace a more global strategy. Trump, however, has a different take. He sees this as a betrayal. Standing before a roaring crowd, he declared that Ford had abandoned the American worker, choosing profit over patriotism. His supporters echoed the sentiment, calling for boycotts and pushing for policies that would force Ford to bring jobs back home. But what if there is more to this story? What if Ford is not turning its back on America, but preparing for a battle against an even bigger competitor? That is where things get interesting. The Tesla factor. Why Ford made this move now? Ford is not just fighting Trump. It is fighting Tesla, and that changes everything. Tesla has led the electric vehicle market, setting benchmarks in innovation, battery efficiency, and seamless software integration for years. Ford, despite its legacy, has struggled to keep up. It has spent billions trying to establish itself as a serious competitor. But in a world where Tesla has mastered direct-to-consumer sales and vertically integrated supply chains, Ford is still playing catch-up. The automaker's ability to manufacture and deliver electric vehicles faster and cheaper is forcing Ford to rethink its entire strategy. With Tesla expanding globally and setting up production hubs outside the United States, Ford sees no choice but to do the same. The company is not just moving production overseas to cut costs, it is doing so to secure its place in the future of the automotive industry. Tesla's rise has redefined what consumers expect from a vehicle. It's no longer just about transportation. Drivers now demand cutting-edge technology, continuous software updates, autonomous capabilities, and a well-integrated charging network for a seamless ownership experience. Ford's traditional model of manufacturing, selling through dealerships, and relying on gas-powered engines is rapidly becoming outdated. If they do not act now, they risk being left behind. But this decision has consequences. While it may make Ford more competitive in the global market, it has triggered a wave of backlash at home. The tension is no longer just between Ford and Trump. It has spread to Congress, and that is where the battle takes on an entirely new dimension: the political crossfire where Congress stands. Ford's announcement has sent shockwaves through Washington, igniting a fierce political debate that goes far beyond the automotive industry. The decision has become a flashpoint in the ongoing battle over the future of American manufacturing, labor rights, and global competitiveness. Republicans are accusing Ford of betraying American workers and caving to global economic pressures, while some Democrats are praising the move as a bold step towards sustainability and long-term market leadership in an increasingly electrified world. Legislators aligned with Trump are pushing for immediate retaliation. There is talk of punitive tariffs targeting automakers that move production overseas, tax penalties for companies that shift jobs out of the country, and new restrictions on federal contracts for corporations that do not prioritize domestic manufacturing. Some lawmakers have even proposed revisiting trade agreements to introduce stricter regulations that would force automakers to keep operations within U.S. borders. The rhetoric is intensifying, with political leaders framing Ford's move as either a betrayal or a necessary evolution in a rapidly changing industry. On the other side, there are those who see Ford's decision as an inevitable shift in the industry. Rather than punishing Ford, some lawmakers argue that the focus should be on making America a more competitive hub for innovation. There is increasing momentum behind expanding tax credits for electric vehicle manufacturing, investing in domestic battery production, and modernizing infrastructure to support the shift to electric transportation. Proponents believe that with the right policies, the U.S. can lead the global EV revolution rather than fight against it. This divide is not just political, it is deeply personal. Ford workers and their families are watching closely, wondering if their jobs are at risk or if new opportunities will emerge in the wake of this controversy. Auto unions are mobilizing, demanding reassurances that American jobs will not be sacrificed in pursuit of cost-cutting measures. Meanwhile, investors are closely analyzing the situation, weighing whether Ford's global gamble will enhance the company's long-term profitability or if the backlash will weaken its market position. Ford is not backing down. They have a strategy, and it involves more than just shifting production. The company is making calculated moves that could redefine its future, shaping not only its role in the EV market, but also its standing in the broader global economy. And that is where their billion-dollar play comes in. Ford's billion-dollar play. While Trump and Congress continue their battle over Ford's decision, the company itself has been quietly working on a game-changing move. Ford is not just relocating production, it is doubling down on the future. Ford has announced a massive investment in battery technology and electric vehicle infrastructure, pouring billions into research and development. Their plan is not just to keep up with Tesla, but to outpace them in areas where traditional automakers have an advantage: scale, experience, and industrial infrastructure. The company is building new battery facilities, forming partnerships with global suppliers, and securing resources that will allow them to control more of the electric vehicle supply chain. They are betting that by investing in cutting-edge technology now, they can position themselves as the leader in electric vehicles when the market fully transitions. But this strategy comes with significant risks. Expanding overseas means navigating complex political landscapes, dealing with shifting regulations, and facing potential retaliation from an administration that sees this move as un-American. There is also the question of whether consumers will support Ford in the long run, or if the backlash will permanently damage its reputation. And just when it seemed like Ford had everything planned out, Trump had one more weapon left to unleash. A move that could change the game entirely. The war is far from over. Trump's retaliation plan. For President Trump, this was not just about one company shifting production overseas. It was a direct challenge to his economic vision. If he let Ford get away with this, what was stopping other corporations from doing the same? The message had to be clear: defy Trump's America First policies, and there would be consequences. Behind closed doors, Trump and his advisors crafted a series of aggressive countermeasures. The first move was an immediate call to rework tariff policies. He proposed new penalties on automakers that relied on foreign production, framing it as a necessary step to protect American workers. Additionally, Trump threatened to revoke government contracts, warning that any company taking jobs away from the United States would no longer be eligible for federal funding or tax incentives. The rhetoric escalated quickly. During a rally, Trump declared, "Ford was built by American hands, and if they want to take that legacy and throw it overseas, they will pay the price." His base roared in approval. His supporters, many of whom worked in manufacturing towns that had already suffered from economic shifts, saw Ford's move as another betrayal in a long list of corporate letdowns. But Ford was prepared. Their leadership remained firm, releasing a statement that reiterated their commitment to innovation, sustainability, and long-term competitiveness. They highlighted their continued investments in electric vehicle infrastructure within the United States and emphasized that the shift was about survival, not politics. Ford executives knew that the auto industry was changing rapidly, and to compete with companies like Tesla and emerging European manufacturers, they had to make tough decisions. As Trump's threats turned into action, the effects rippled across industries. Automakers, tech giants, and global investors watched closely. Some companies saw an opportunity to align with Trump, emphasizing their commitment to domestic production. Others worried that his unpredictable policies could create long-term instability. Then something happened that no one expected. Major players in the business world, including influential lobbyists and industry leaders, began pushing back against Trump's aggressive stance. They warned that targeting Ford with punitive measures could have unintended consequences, not just for the auto industry, but for the entire economy. The battle between Trump and Ford was no longer just about one company's decision. It had become a referendum on how the United States should engage with a globalized market. The unintended consequences. Trump's attack backfired in a way no one saw coming. Instead of forcing Ford into submission, his aggressive measures sent shockwaves through the economy. Businesses that relied on Ford's supply chain faced uncertainty. Investors, wary of the growing tension between government policies and corporate decision-making, began reassessing their strategies. The stock market, already sensitive to trade disruptions, reacted with volatility. It wasn't just Ford that felt the heat. Other automakers, some of which had once praised Trump's tax policies, started reconsidering their own production strategies. If tariffs and government contract cancellations became a common response to corporate decisions, it would set a dangerous precedent. Business leaders met in closed-door sessions, weighing their options. Some quietly lobbied against Trump's approach, fearing that his policies were becoming more about personal retribution than economic strategy. One of the biggest surprises came from American consumers. While some rallied behind Trump's calls for a Ford boycott, others viewed the conflict differently. Consumers who supported clean energy and global competitiveness sided with Ford, arguing that the company was making a smart, future-focused move. Social media became a battleground. Hashtags calling for a Ford boycott trended, but so did counter-movements urging people to support the company's commitment to innovation. Ford, meanwhile, doubled down on its messaging. The company launched a public relations campaign emphasizing its American roots, reminding the public that it was still investing billions in domestic jobs and facilities. Executives gave interviews highlighting the need to remain competitive in an evolving global market. They framed their decision not as a rejection of American manufacturing, but as an adaptation to new economic realities. Meanwhile, Trump found himself in a difficult position. His strategy of pressuring corporations into submission had worked before, but Ford was proving to be a formidable opponent. If he continued pushing, he risked alienating business leaders and economic allies. If he backed down, it would look like a defeat. The political stakes were high. As the battle escalated, it became clear that this was no longer just about Ford or Trump. It was about the balance of power between government and business. Who truly controlled the direction of the American economy? Was it the politicians shaping policy, or the corporations making strategic decisions based on market realities? The answer to that question would have lasting implications. Ford's defiance had set the stage for a high-stakes showdown, one that would shape not just the future of the company, but the trajectory of American industry itself. And as the dust settled, one thing became evident. This fight was far from over. The future of American cars. This is just the beginning. America's auto industry is changing forever. The days when automakers could rely on traditional manufacturing are slipping away. Ford's move to expand electric vehicle production overseas is not just about a single company. It signals a turning point for the entire industry. The same forces pressuring Ford are also reshaping General Motors, Stellantis, and even Tesla. If Ford, an American icon, is forced to adapt, how long before its competitors follow? The shift toward electric vehicles is no longer a matter of choice. Governments worldwide are setting aggressive emission targets, consumers are demanding cleaner alternatives, and the global race for battery innovation is accelerating. Ford's decision to invest abroad is not an isolated event. It is a symptom of a much larger transformation. General Motors has already announced its own plans to transition fully to electric vehicles. Stellantis, which owns Chrysler, Jeep, and Dodge, is investing billions in battery production. Even Tesla, despite its strong American identity, sources much of its critical materials from overseas. For traditional automakers, this is more than an evolution. It is a battle for survival. Electric vehicle production is fundamentally different from building internal combustion engine cars. The factories, supply chains, and workforce requirements are changing, forcing companies to rethink everything from production lines to raw material sourcing. The transition also means confronting automation. As manufacturing becomes more dependent on robotics and artificial intelligence, the number of traditional factory jobs will inevitably decline. The image of thousands of workers assembling cars by hand is quickly becoming a thing of the past. Ford's conflict with Trump highlights the tension between progress and tradition. Trump's push for domestic production aligns with his economic nationalism. But can the United States remain competitive while resisting globalization? Ford's leadership made a calculated decision to secure its long-term success, even at the cost of immediate political backlash. If other automakers do not adapt, they risk falling behind in the global race for innovation. But this battle is not just about cars. The auto industry has long been a pillar of American identity, representing resilience, strength, and ingenuity. If Ford's move is a preview of what is to come, what does this mean for the future of American industry as a whole? The next few years will determine whether the United States remains a leader in automotive innovation or falls behind in the global shift towards sustainability and automation. And this fight does not stop at the auto industry. The forces at play here are much larger than one company's decision. The economic domino effect. What if this is not just about Ford, but about America's economic future? The shockwaves from this battle go far beyond automakers. The ripple effects will be felt across supply chains, job markets, and even political landscapes. Ford's decision is a warning sign of deeper economic vulnerabilities that could reshape entire industries. The rising cost of raw materials has been one of the biggest factors driving automakers to expand production overseas. Tariffs on imported steel, aluminum, and lithium have made domestic manufacturing more expensive than ever. These materials are not just critical for vehicles, but for industries ranging from consumer electronics to defense. If production costs continue to climb, more companies may follow Ford's lead, shifting operations abroad to stay competitive. Job displacement is another growing concern. Manufacturing jobs have long been the backbone of many American communities, but as companies optimize for efficiency and cost reduction, employment numbers are shrinking. This does not mean new jobs will not emerge, but the transition will be painful. Highly skilled workers specializing in automation and software engineering will be in demand. But for traditional factory workers, opportunities may become scarce. The promise of retraining programs offers hope, but whether they can keep pace with industry changes remains uncertain. At the heart of this issue is a fundamental question. Who is really winning? Ford, by securing its global position; Trump, by rallying his base around economic nationalism; or is it the global market which forces companies to choose between economic survival and patriotic loyalty? It is a hard question, but what do you think? Let's know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you there.